Let's take a look at a few responses that Trump gave on Sunday evening that betray just how much further south things are about to go with Trump at the helm of the economy.
Is there any movement on China? Because China says
a little bit. Look, a little bit. They want to make a deal, obviously. Right now, they're not doing business with us. You know, people talk about going cold turkey with China, meaning just forget about it. We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year with China. And now they're not doing any business with us, you know, not because of them, because of me. Because at 145%, you can't do business. But something's going to happen that's going to be positive.
Are you convinced yet? Trump was asked if there was any movement on China in terms of striking a deal, and his response was a little bit. Consider this. Even when there is literally no hope of a deal, still Donald Trump lies and says that he's whipping up the strongest, most powerful deal you've ever seen. So what does it mean when even the fake bluster is gone? Most likely that there is nothing on the horizon and that there won't be anything on the horizon. And look, here is my objective take, because while I would love to say that America has the strong hand to play, the reality is that we don't. First of all, the US needs China a lot more than China needs the US. The whole world imports from China. Without the US, China will be okay. However, I would challenge anybody watching to imagine their house without any goods from China. Probably not too easy. The harsh reality is that we are not going to reshore jobs that were lost to China. American manufacturing has been declining for nearly a century, since it peaked just after World War II. Our labor laws and our wages make it impossible, literally impossible, for us to compete in that sector. And that's not me complaining about our labor laws and wages. I support them, but with that comes some realities, like the fact that we will cede that ground. So the notion that Trump thinks that we're suddenly going to manufacture everything here in the US and that Americans will actually pay the prices that American manufacturing requires betrays a fundamental and dangerous misunderstanding of consumer behavior and our economy more broadly. Second of all, another reason that China is likely not sprinting to the negotiating table is that they aren't subject to the same political pressure that Donald Trump and Republicans are based on our system of government. They don't have midterms coming up next year. Xi is president for life. He's not going anywhere. And China is a communist country that can suppress critical media and punish dissent if they need to. The US, at least for now, can't do that, meaning political gravity still exists. China can afford to hold out. Hell, they can afford to hold out for a decade if they need to. The United States, well, judging by Trump's very quickly tanking approval ratings, not so much. The likely resolution here is that Donald Trump caves, like we all know he's going to do, like he's done multiple times in the past, and we'll all go back to pre-tariff rates, only the rest of the world will be much less reliant on the US because they've now recognized that we are an unreliable trade partner. Countries will import fewer goods from American farmers, for example, by going to places like Brazil for soybeans and Australia for beef. Why? Because their countries are not led by a manic egomaniac who will turn the switch on and off on a whim. So even if the rates do go back to normal, our country is already, as of right now, going to be worse off. Which is why what he says here is such nonsense.
4.5 years ago, I left, and I'll tell you what, we didn't have any of these problems. The good news is costs are way down, groceries are down, eggs are down, gasoline is way down. It's all coming down. It's all looking good. The tariffs are strong. We're taking in a lot of money from tariffs. We were losing a lot before I got here. We were losing billions of dollars a day, and now we're doing great, and we haven't even kicked in yet. And eventually we'll be reducing taxes very substantially for the people of our country because the money is so great coming in from tariffs that I'll be able to reduce taxes to a very large extent and maybe almost completely.
Okay, I want to be clear. What Trump is saying is absolute fiction. First of all, when he says that we're taking in all this money from tariffs, what he means is that he is taxing Americans. Foreign countries do not pay tariffs. American consumers pay tariffs, period. No other way around it. We can't tax other countries. We don't give them tax bills from our IRS. We have no way of charging them. We impose import tariffs that are paid by the importing companies, which those companies then pass on to the consumer, meaning us. In fact, the whole basis for this trade war is based on Donald Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of very basic economics. Here's economist Jeffrey Sachs explaining as much here.
If you take your credit card and you go shopping and you run up a large credit card debt, you're running a trade deficit with all those shops. Now, it would be pretty strange if you then blamed all the shop owners for having sold you all those things. You're ripping me off, you're ripping me off, you're ripping me off, I'm running a trade deficit. That is the level of understanding of the President of the United States. The trade deficit does not represent at all trade policies. It represents spending relative to production or earnings. We call that an identity. I teach it in the second day of my course in international monetary economics. Trump never made it to the second day. So he says, you're running a trade deficit. Look, they're all cheating me. But all that's happening is the United States is outspending its national income.
So either Donald Trump truly does not have the slightest fucking clue what he is talking about, which is very possible, or he's got a more self-serving plan in mind.
And we're going to make a lot of money, and we're going to cut taxes for the people of this country. It'll take a little while before we do that, but we're going to be cutting taxes. And it's possible we'll do a complete tax cut, because I think the tariffs will be enough to cut all of the income tax. Now, we have a lot of debt that's been left to us, unfortunately, over many years. We'll take care of that. But the tariffs, if people only understood the tariffs, we're going to be giving people of this country a tremendous tax cut. And we're going to start with people making less than $200,000 a year.
And there it is. He wants to eliminate personal income tax. These tariffs are his way of shifting the tax burden from people like him to working class Americans. Remember, the top 1% paid 42% of income taxes in 2020, while the bottom 50% paid just 2.3%. Why? Because those top 1% earners make the majority of the money in this country, so it's commensurate. But Donald Trump wants people like him, meaning ultra-wealthy people, to keep all of their money, to hoard all of their money, and rely on regular consumers, working-class Americans, to shoulder the tax burden in this country. If greed was a policy, this would be it. In fact, one Twitter user explained it perfectly. The US collects $4.5 trillion of income tax per year. The US imports $3.8 trillion per year. We'd have to self-tax our imports at 120% to replace income tax with tariffs. Would you prefer your cost of living double in order to not pay any more income tax? Trump knows that he could never replace income taxes with tariffs without wreaking havoc on the working class, but he doesn't care because he isn't working class. The biggest con in the United States is a billionaire, funded by other billionaires, getting into office with empty promises of bringing down the cost of eggs and housing, only to immediately crash the economy because he starts implementing a long-term plan to eliminate his own tax burden while seeking to more than double the price of everything for regular Americans. Look, I'm not here to relitigate anybody's vote from 2024, but I will say this. I hope that Americans, left, right, and center, can disabuse yourselves of this notion that Republicans will ever help the working class, will ever help regular people. The last time the Republicans had full control of government, they promised you a cheaper and more comprehensive healthcare plan, they promised you a middle-class tax cut, they promised you an infrastructure upgrade, they promised you a manufacturing renaissance. Literally none of those things happened. They passed a tax cut for the ultra-wealthy, where 83% of the benefits went to millionaires and billionaires. And now they're doing the exact same thing, promising you the sun and the moon, that the prices of housing and rent and groceries and eggs are all going to plummet, and instead you are paying more for literally everything. The stock market has crashed, we're likely in a recession, your 401k is gutted. I don't know how many times Lucy has to pull the football away from Charlie Brown before we finally get the picture, but my job is to show you, in as clear terms as humanly possible, what is happening. We are being lied to by somebody whose only goal is to help himself and the wealthy donors who he surrounds himself with. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.